In this video, we're going to take a look at the node editor. Now, the node editor is integrated pretty good into lots of different aspects of Maya. We're going to use the node editor to add to our character's controls. Now, we've seen the node editor before when we opened up the Hypershade. And the Hypershade gives us a nice overview with lots of different tools inside of there, and the node editor is one of them. Inside the node editor, we're allowed to see the different selected or added nodes and their attributes. Now, what's powerful about this is that we can then make different connections between those nodes. And you'll see exactly what type of connections those are. So I went to Windows, Node Editor, and let's just make this bigger. Bring our bird up to the top here. And what I'm going to end up doing is setting up the wing so that all I need to do is go to this joint right here and rotate the wing. Now you're looking at it and saying, well, okay, you just did that. What's the difference? If I select all of these joints and then rotate, we get a rotation value on each joint. And now that wing curls nicely. So we get a very different effect. And that's what I'm after. I want that selection so that when I rotate, it rotates all of the joints. As opposed to if I just select that, you can see I'm selecting the root. None of these are actually selected. And when I rotate, well, we just get a flat, boring wing flap. Not what I want. I want to be able to select this joint and have all of these automatically rotate with this joint's rotation. Let's look. We're going to rotate this in the X, and we can see right there that it's the one getting the value. We'll just return that to 0. And let me bring up the node editor again. Inside of my node editor, you can see I have a blank canvas here. I want to add my current selection. I'm going to click this icon right here. Now that adds the left wing. Now I can't see any of its attributes because this node is closed up. But we have 3 different tiers that we can click right here. We don't actually even have to be on an individual tier. We can just click, and that's going to expand it to the first level and then to the final level. And now that exposes those attributes nicely for me. And what I'm looking for is that rotate X. Here's rotate. I'll hit the little plus there, and now it will expand the rest of those channels. What I want is rotate X, this port right here. I want to connect that to the next joint in the line. So I'll select the joint here and then hit plus again. And there's left wing 2. Notice that it already has a connection, and it's connecting a scale type value there. And you can actually hover over the connection, and it tells you it's connecting the inverse scale. This is normal for all joints. And we can just ignore it. We don't need to do anything with that. That's just so that the joints have their functionality that they need to. So now let's expand wing 2, and we're going to expand rotate. So on the sides of these nodes here, I have input ports and output ports. They're also color-coded. I can see the ones that I'm allowed to connect. For instance, I cannot connect green to blue. I can only go blue to blue. So if I want to connect left wing 1, rotate X, to left wing 2, rotate X, I just grab the port, I'm left mouse click, drag it right over, and look at that. When I come close enough, it says, hey, you're almost there. That's what you're going to connect to. And when I reach it, it goes white saying you've got a good connection. I'll let go of the left mouse button. My connection is made. I can now see that there in the channel box. This yellowish block, this color coding tells me that it has some sort of input connection. The node editor tells us exactly what that is. I can click on that connection. It highlights yellow. We can hover over it, and it will actually tell me what's being connected. Now, if I want to delete that connection, click, it goes yellow, hit delete. Real simple. Let's reconnect it. Now, if I go back out here and rotate, it is rotating, and you can see it right there, rotating the first joint, and the first joint is being fed into the second and rotating the same amount. If I select wing 2, 35.546 from wing 1, select wing 2, same value. Let's return this back to 0, and let's add our other joints. this time, I'm going to select the rest of them. We do not need that end effector. There's no geometry out there. It might affect a single vert, but just going to ignore that. With all of those selected, we'll hit plus. And I'm just going to raise these up here a bit. And let's make this bigger. We kind of know what's happening out there now. Inside the node editor, we can select and move around just like we can with all of our other cameras and different viewports. But we can also turn on a grid snap, which will allow me to keep things a little bit better organized, everything on the same plane there. And I could also go up here and expand all of my nodes all at once. So with all of those selected, I'll just click that and get all of those to expand. Or we could collapse them. All right, let's zoom in. And I'm going to expand my rotate channels. That first one, we'll make a real quick connection here. Boom, rotate. I'm not going to expand the second one. Let's just grab rotate and drag it. And notice what happens. So I can't go into rotate because that first rotate is all of the channels. But as you saw, if I hover over it, it says what you're trying to do is find a single channel. Well, let me open that for you. So we'll do that again. We want rotate X, not the rotate Y. We'll just delete those real quick. And then rotate X, hold, and rotate X. Now, something else we can do as well, if we don't really know the channel, or maybe it's not showing up here, or we just don't want to wait that long, we can grab this and notice I can take it to the top. And when I go to the top, I get a drop-down menu, and I can also choose it right through there. That connection's being made. It's blue, still shows as green here, but that's just because the channel is collapsed. Now I'll select the first joint. That will select it out there in the world. And now I'll rotate in the X. There we go. I only need to have one joint selected. And let's just try it again. I'll deselect, select that first joint, rotate in the X. Much easier, and that node editor gives me the ability to make these connections really quick. Now, a couple of other quick things here inside the node editor. If you don't want the node to be selected in the viewport versus the node editor, you can choose to unsync. So if I click that button right there, now if I select wing 1, it's safe. It's not going to select it out there in the world, and vice versa. So if we think that we might have a problem, we don't want something to get accidentally moved in 3D space, we can turn that syncing off. A little bit safer actually to work that way, but if you're testing it, it is nice to be able to select the node and then translate it out there in the world. Now, if I want to clear my graph, click this icon right here, clear the graph. Let's say I've made a bunch of connections, but now I want to make some modifications. Let's get out of component mode here. I could click that joint and we're going to add it. I could also choose the input and output connections. If I hit that, it's going to graph out all of the nodes that are being connected, but it's also going to graph all of those connections that I just made. So let's do clear, and let's just go to the middle guy and choose input, output. It'll graph those there for us. If we have some nodes that we don't want to see, especially if I choose to graph it through the input-output connections, we can select some and then just hit the minus button right here. And that's just going to take them out of the viewport. The node editor can get congested very, very quickly, so being able to add and subtract singular nodes like that is really nice. So this works the same way inside of the Hypershade. It is very useful. Making connections between nodes is really fun to see what you can come up with.